Hello, this is Derek Hansen for strengthpowerspeed.com, and this is our 22nd episode of our Performance Concepts Chat. And in this episode, we speak with a good friend of mine. I've known him since about 2002, 2003. His name's Angus Reid, played 13 years in the Canadian Football League at center position. Angus now since retired. I think he retired about three years ago. And he did a talk at a TED conference in Vancouver just under a year ago. And his topic was the value of high school football to a young person's development. And you can go on YouTube and check out his talk. Really impressive talk. He's a very good public speaker. When he got to talk about the value of high school football, and remember, we're now in a time when there's a lot of negative things coming out about football, particularly with head injuries and concussions, CTE, and the long-term effects. So this is someone who's played a long time, and would be basically hit in the head probably on every play. He has lots of physical scars from playing, and has had lots of surgeries. So he knows the cost of playing football, if anybody does. I don't even think he can straighten his arms. He has like scar tissue and bone chips and things in his elbows, so he can't fully extend his arm anymore. So, he's gone through that. He knows what the cost was, but he also sees tremendous value in playing the sport. And I said, particularly at high school level. And we get into all of the details around his talk. And I'll even have a few excerpts from the talk in the podcast. And so, just hearing from him and seeing what value he got, what he turned it into, I think is pretty important. And we shot this in the car because it was time efficient. We weren't going to break into karaoke, or it wasn't a gimmick. It was just a good way for two busy individuals to sit down for about 45 minutes and talk about something that we feel is important. And so I even have my own son wanting to play full contact football, tackle football, and we're dealing with that. And is it too early? And so it's probably in the minds of a lot of parents right now. And what are the costs? What are the benefits of putting somebody in football? And when's too early and when's too much? So I think it's a good talk to listen to. I wanted to get away from just the training side of things and talk about sports in general, and I thought this was a good way to do it. So have a listen. I'm sure you'll enjoy and appreciate what Angus has to offer. And again, we'll look for your comments. This was just a good general talk about sports and youth development in general. So please enjoy our talk with Angus Reid.
Well, it's funny, Derek. Sometimes I'm asked to speak at schools now. We'll kind of do town halls with parents for their football program to ease fears, answer questions, so parents can feel a little bit better than just hearing the boogeyman story from the news, where they can explain, this is how we run our program, this is why we do things, here's our equipment technology, here's our philosophy on coaching. And you're right about coaching, and particularly at the youngest level, unfortunately, that's generally where the least educated, least informed, because it's usually moms and dads just trying to help out, and you can't fault them for trying. But football particularly is the one sport that requires probably the highest level of coaching when you're dealing with the youngest participants, because of the obvious, right? You're dealing with constant contact that, to be played correctly, requires a body positioning of an athlete that I don't really think most youth can get themselves and hold themselves in. When you also then add equipment, you add speed, velocity, and fear, the proper body positioning to be safe and sound, and actually to be able to be functional, I don't think most 8-9-year-old kids can do. It's unfair to ask them to hold those positions. Yeah. So what does a kid do when they first put on equipment and they get scared? They hide in the equipment and absorb the blow. Well, now you're defeating what the sport is, and it becomes an exercise in who's the biggest kid in the field beating up everybody else. Now you've ingrained a psychological fear of contact, and you've also ingrained improper movement patterns to react to contact. And coaches, I don't think, are prepared to teach that. And this is why I truly believe I don't think you need contact football for young ages. I don't think it's appropriate, and I don't think it's fair to ask kids that physically aren't developed enough to try to get in positions that need to be in positions to play that sport. And therefore you're getting kids that are getting hurt when they're 9 years old, which is ridiculous. They're scared, and they've also now ingrained bad patterns that a superior coach or a better coach years later are going to have to undo now. And those are instinctual patterns they've built in because of not being able to do things correctly. And unfortunately, sometimes having coaches that teach what they watched the Raiders do in the 70s because that's what football was to them. And as much as I love this sport, I don't think it's a sport you need to put kids in pads and get them hitting, when they are, again, it's an arbitrary number, but I wouldn't think for sure before, that junior high age group. I really don't think so. And I think I don't think it's necessary. And for a lot of reasons, I think it's unfair to a kid to put them in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, it would almost be akin to if you're going to teach a kid boxing, you're probably going to work on hitting the bag, footwork, all of these things before you get them sparring. You don't just throw them in and have them spar right away. So when you did your TED talk on the subject, what kind of things did you? I mean, for people who haven't seen it, what kind of things did you touch on? What were I mean, you don't have a lot of time to speak with these things. What were the main points you wanted to get across?
Well, I've been retired for 3 years now. You know what I look back and what I am proud of? That I can stand here and speak in front of you today. That I can look people in the eye when I talk to them. That I can speak about things that matter to me. That I can commit to something and actually stick with it. That I can work hard for goals that I've set for myself. That I know how to be a good teammate. That I can work with multiple changing personalities on an ongoing basis and make things work together. That I can take coaching. That I can give mentorship from that once I've learned it. I've learned how to win. I've also learned how to lose and how to take things from that loss and move forward. I've understood how to deal with pressure and keep clarity of mind. These are real things. These are things that you can move forward in life. Because you know what? Winning championships is not going to make you a better father. Playing 200 games of professional football doesn't build a business for you. Owning 2 of these does not make you a better husband. Nobody cares. Actually, people care for like 17 seconds because they want to get a photo with it, and they pretend to take it, and I got to chase them and get it back. Then they don't care anymore. Okay? It's the qualities that you learn playing a pro sport that matter.
I think the point is touching on what people generally have acknowledged forever is the value of playing a sport. And particularly my knowledge has always been on team sports, and I think it's an interesting study to look at successful people post athletic career that played an individual sport or a team sport, because I think it's a different person. I do. I don't have a lot of science behind that, but I know team sports. I gravitate towards them because of my personality, and I see tremendous value in transferring those to other things in life. The problem in today's world is we've done this, and I struggle with this sort of pursuit of greatness at a younger and younger level, where now sports isn't about helping kids grow up. It's about finding elite athletes as young as possible and either monetizing off the parents' dream of this, or just trying to build your elite program, and that's what it's here for. And I struggle with that. So what we're getting is full buy-in to single sport only at a younger and younger age if you want to even have an opportunity to participate. Yep. Or you're out. And so you're left with a scenario where either you can afford to do this year round and do all the commitments that they're throwing at you, at sometimes 8-9 years old. You got to make a decision. Are you all in at hockey or basketball or whatever it is? Because this has become a system now that requires funding and talent, or you're out.
Yep.
And so now you've removed sports from being what I believe a major cog in the upbringing of a young person's life, where they lean on for relationships and lessons and things that they've learned that they can carry forth, to being almost back to the old Soviet model, where you were picked or you weren't, and sorry, move on. Yep. And I think you're getting a lot of kids now that they're left out, and you're starting to see the ramifications where you don't give a young person something to do with their time, something to believe in, or something to exhaust them, they're going to find something to do that with, and we're starting to see the other problems. So my big belief in football, as particularly at the high school level, is I see it as one of the few sports left that kind of doesn't weed you out at a young age. they'll take anybody. You know, it's not a basketball team or a select team where there's 12 people and that's it, or a hockey team where, you know, the financial barrier to entry is high. If you don't know how to skate or don't have the finance to have it, you can't just show up. I didn't play football till the 11th grade, and you can still do that today. You can go to high school and just show up. They're happy to have you.
What did you do before that?
My story's a little bit complex. I loved sports my whole life. I loved basketball. I loved everything. When I first entered high school, though, my freshman year, I got really, really sick. Sick is a funny word. My appendix blew, and I'm stubborn, so I didn't tell anybody for 6 days. So I should have been dead. Yeah, I had a blown appendix. It was a disaster. And by the time I finally told them, I rushed to the hospital. And long story short, 2 months later, I finally made it out, and that wrote off that whole year. I was a big kid that ended up losing 80 or 90 pounds in that whole span of time. My confidence was shattered. I came back to school a lost kid, and so I was one of those guys that didn't have drive, didn't have belief in myself. So my 9th grade year, nothing. My 10th grade year, I didn't play any sports.
Wow.
I wasn't a troublemaker. I was one of those kids that didn't have maybe the motivation or the confidence to now go expose myself and try, but I also wasn't going to get in trouble, so I was the kid that was just kind of hiding, not wanting to get exposed either way. And so heading into the 11th grade, you know, I was just an average person. I wasn't an exceptional athlete. I didn't play any sports. I was a normal-sized kid, and so football became an option that it sort of hit me. I got to do something. I want to get involved in something. I really wanted to. I was just scared, but it was a sport that wasn't going to say no to you. It made it very easy for you to come out. Now, that being said, it's not an easy sport to make it in or excel in, but to participate in. And I think the objective with amateur sports, I still believe, is you want kids to participate. It's not about finding that greatest athlete. They're gonna happen. They're gonna exist. They're gonna be created. It's about giving kids something that they can partake in, be a part of, and learn to push themselves, learn to contribute, learn to show up every day, learn to win, learn to lose, learn to cooperate. All the great things, and I'm a big believer in skills that transfer beyond what you do, and football can teach you those things, and the fact that it won't say no to you. It's the only sport that I know left that could take 80, 90 people. You know, I know people talk track and whatnot, but in a team sport setting where you're all working together in a common goal, that's why I think it's so important. And that's my talk was on the value of having it. So somebody like me, a lost junior high kid, doesn't know what he's going to do, they can go play. Yep. You don't say no to them. As long as it's a high school sport, as far as I know now, you know, the school supports it. There's no financial barrier to entry. I know there's a nominal fee to play, but I also know I've never run into a high school coach that's had said no to someone because of it. They can take care of that. So you've removed financial ability and the athletic ability. You can play. And the beauty of football is there's something for everyone to do. There really is. I mean, there really is.
Regardless of ability.
Regardless of the ability, body size. You know, everyone has a skill in some level, whether, you know, something, right? But even if you're the backup, a smart coach makes that scout team person feel so valuable to the success of their team. Everybody has a role, and every role can be deemed extremely important if you have a smart coach in that. I mean, as I said in my talk, you want every kid to start, you can probably do it. Add up all the special teams, you're up to 88 starting spots. Yeah. There's nothing that comes close to that. My first experience was on a kickoff return team. I mean, it was innocuous because it's the front line of the kickoff return team. It's about as entry position as you can get, but I was playing. Yeah. I was like everybody else. I got on the field, I got dirty, I hit somebody, we won the game. I was part of the win. Yeah. That's a very powerful thing to a young, impressionable, call myself an athlete, but a young, impressionable person that was looking for a reason to believe in themselves. And I was able to take that and build on it. I don't know any other sport I could have walked into without any knowledge, any previous playing of it, with average athletic ability, and had the ability to, one, just be on the team, and two, get out there and participate in the game that quickly. Yeah. I really don't think so. And that's why, you know, we can talk all day long, and I'm a huge, I'm pushing hard that football needs to fix a lot of things. There's a lot of problems with the sport, but that value to me is so large, we can't just say, well, it's got problems, get rid of it. Well, you get rid of it, where do those kids go? It's still a final place where a kid can go and be a part of something that matters, that's positive.
Yeah. Well, then I
powerful.
think there needs to be more positive examples, because right now, almost everybody's seen that Friday Night Tykes where it's just horrible to watch.
Embarrassing.
It is.
It's embarrassing.
And then I'm watching the second season of Last Chance U, which is interesting. It's very complex, but that's all these guys have, right? They're not academically skilled by any means, but this is their chance at something, right?
But there's two things going on here. Is the point of amateur sports to produce pro athletes? Is that the point of them?
I think it's important to have that dream, right, or that hope.
Of course.
But absolutely
But is that
not.
the objective of why we have?
No.
Is that the objective why? Is that why you put your children in amateur sports?
No. I mean, I know what my genetics are, so I'm looking at my kid going, he's having fun here. He ain't making it to the NFL, so let's have a good time now.
And this is where I think, it's funny they bring me to keynote at sports dinners and stuff, and I'll rip parents right there that they got a 10-year-old son and they have a personal trainer for them and they have all this stuff for them year round. I'm going, you are weakening your child, because all of a sudden you've given them all this stuff in the hopes and dreams that they make it to the top. Why not just let them grow up with the sport? Let them figure it out themselves. Let them learn a bit of training, this and that on their own. And as they evolve, and if they keep rising up, that'll add in too, and that's part of natural progression. But you give them a professional athlete lifestyle at the age of 11 or 12. You've already set them up on the problem that I find most athletes run into now. We star athletes at such a young age now that we remove all stressors from their life so they can achieve at their highest level.
Yep.
Okay, and you're talking teenagers now, right? So what they learn now is this: I perform, everyone else does everything else for me. As long as I perform, everything else gets taken care of for me.
Yeah.
Okay, they get to, if you're lucky enough, you get to university. That all gets dialed up now another notch. You perform, we will take care of everything else. Yep. We will make your meals. We will make sure class schedules are taken care of. Your laundry's done. All we want you to do is perform. We will make life as easy as possible outside of that need so you can focus on performing. So practically, they've learned nothing about taking care of themselves in life. They've learned no transferable skills. Zero, right? So now sports isn't about helping them grow up as a person. It's about finding their ability to maximize at playing that sport. That is it, okay? The other problem is now, psychologically, you've built in the reality that they believe their worth in life, their ability to get taken care of, relies on their physical ability to perform at that sport.
Yep.
And I had ran into all the time where, during my pro years, we'd get guys coming from huge schools, and they'd walk in and, where's breakfast? Make it. They've never made breakfast.
Yep.
Who does my laundry? They'd go in the weight room, Derek, and these were physical freaks. What do? People had put plates on for them. They had just kind of been handheld through everything because they had gifts, and as long as they performed with those gifts, there was no need to understand how to take care of themselves. Yeah. And you're producing these kind of lost young adults. I mean, I couldn't imagine.
But I assume that's part of the sell when they're recruiting these kids for college. Like, you come here, all you got to do is play football.
And that's the problem, right? And we've set it up as that's the dream now. So we've changed sports as being a piece of you being raised as how you can get everything if you can do this. And you say, look, something like a Last Chance U is, football or whatnot or any other sport now that has a high monetary reward at the end. That's becoming the means of why they're playing. Yep. They're chasing that, and that's a bigger statement on a lot of other things. And that's where now parents that have means now that want that end dream too are financing the children to do it and putting everything they got into football or any sport is going to get me there instead of it's part of upbringing. And that's a bigger conversation, and that's where you're 12, 13 years old. If you're good, you're good, and if you're not good, you're not good, and you're going to play. Use sports as a vessel to grow up. And I heard something a little while ago that I think is very powerful. Whatever skill you're teaching somebody, or better last beyond the immediate use of the skill. That's a powerful thing. So, you teach me something. Example would be you teach me a lift in the weight room. If it doesn't transfer to anything beyond just getting better at that lift in the weight room, it's not very powerful. Yeah. It's not very good use of what I'm doing. Now, if that lift transfers to me being able to perform my sport, great. If that lift enables me to live a healthier, longer life, even better. If that lift helps me also be more confident in what I'm doing, I mean, it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And we've now taken things and going, be good at this and it'll get you there. And that's it.
Well, that's a great metaphor for life too, because the economy can shift, right? And people are out of jobs because they have focused too much on one aspect of their skill set.
And it's a non-transferable aspect.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing where, I'm a big fan when we're talking about great coaches I've had, and whether they knew it or not, they taught me how to live through coaching these sports. The ones that just taught you to get better at the sport, it's needed, but it's kind of shallow.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer that sports is one of the last places left, particularly with young kids, where you actually might have their attention for 2 hours.
Yeah.
On the field is maybe the last place left where a kid doesn't think to look on his phone because he doesn't have his phone, and he's distracted by constant physical presence of a ball or being hit, or there's actual focus.
Yeah.
Right? So I tell a coach, you might be the most powerful influencer in this person's life right now, because they're multitasking when their parents are talking to them, they're multitasking when their teachers are talking to them, they're multitasking when they're watching TV, but not when they're playing the sport, because it demands focus. If you can utilize that to actually teach them skills that matter through the sport, because they are actually paying attention right now, they have to, that's a powerful thing. So, that's where I still keep coming back to, as much as I love talking with you and other people about high performance in athletics. I mean, we all marvel at it. We love it. How you get there. For the most part, for me, I love the amateur sports, and I love the concept of it as a really, really great tool to help young people grow up. If they're going to go on from that point, absolutely fantastic. But I think it has to come organically from the kid wanting it, enjoying it, and just sort of moving up the ranks naturally, rather than, a plan from a parent for their 10-year-old that this is what we're going to do. Even if they make it, I think you're setting that child up for failure in the afterworld. That they have no understanding outside of, I perform, people take care of me. I think it's a dangerous trap.
So if you had a role in the coaching education, and you're working with young coaches and maybe coming up with a curriculum, what are the things that you're emphasizing, and what are the things that you're trying to improve upon? What are the areas that need a lot of work?
Well, obviously, technical mastery of the fundamentals is what matters more than anything in life, and that's you can't bypass that. I think a lot of young coaches they get goo-gooed over going to pro coaches conferences, and they want to run these funny pistol formations and all this nonsense that sounds great, and all these complex systems. Look, and then you go out and help them, and the kid does not know how to properly sit in a formation that's going to structurally make him powerful and safe.
Yeah.
But they're trying to make them run these bizarre formations that sound great, but they don't know how to engage contact properly. They don't know how to produce force properly through the ground, not only be effective, but to be safe. I'm going, what are you guys doing, right? Because it's boring. I think coaches need to teach the boring stuff to be safe, but I really believe that sets the child up for the foundations of understanding what life requires, is that constant repetition of fundamentals and principles, that boring stuff that you do every single day to master those foundations. And I think people bypass that as young coaches. They want to do the glamorous stuff. They want to get the stuff that looks good, and you're skipping steps, and you're hurting your athlete, because they now chase those things. They think that's what's important in life. When you look at the real people that have staying power, I think they're the ones that live in the basics. And they were taught that at a young age. You listen to someone like a Michael Jordan talk about what Dean Smith, how he would drill in fundamentals to him every single day, how a defensive slide looks, and it has to be this way again and again, and all those things. And you hear the great ones, they generally spend their life in those boring repetition of practice. Now, after that, I would talk to coaches about everything you do beyond that. I think it was Toyota that came up with this, but was the 5 why questions. Mm-hmm. Ask yourself why, at least 5 levels to why you're doing something, until you kind of exhaust that. And if you can't answer these, why are you doing it? It look good. You want to drill down, and you really have to understand why you're doing something. Yeah. Why are we doing this? Why are we teaching this to our kids? And getting back to my earlier statement, if you can sufficiently answer those whys to a level that makes sense, great. If you can get to the point where it also transcends beyond just teaching them the ability to do, the base block or a run, whatever, where it can actually teach the kids something that will matter afterwards, now I think you're what we call mentors. Yeah. Coaching is coaching, but being a mentor, or someone that I have a few in my life that I now lean back on years after playing, because these guys taught me more than just football, but they did it through football.
Yep.
And they taught me how to dedicate to something, how to commit, how to very much so appreciate time and not waste it, and all these little nuances of taking notes during meetings and how to watch film. I mean, it was an exercise in understanding detail that carries forward to understanding detail in everything you do, to how to speak with confidence when I was on the field, so people would buy into what I was saying, so they would do it. Carried forward to me to speak to confidence with what I do afterwards. I mean, these were little things that transferred. And if you can get your whys down to transferring that skill beyond it, I think you are a coach that has staying power, and will be the ones that your athletes will come back to years later and thank you, and probably try to emulate your skills to their parenting, their teaching. I mean, that's all coaching is helping people improve.
Yeah.
And if you can help them improve in their sport and make that transfer to helping them improve their life, because we have a problem today, Derek, where it's a zero-sum game. Make them great at their sport at all costs. And you're seeing the problem where they excel at their athletes and they're disasters in every other facet in their life, because you have coaches that care about performance, and not so many mentors that cared about the person, trying to make them as good as they possibly could, and using sports as the vehicle to do that.
Well, I think it's an over-specificity issue. And our good friend Mark Uyama, he always tells me, like, we get guys in who are from big schools, and we got to teach them how to play football. We got to teach them how to set up. We got to teach them how to move, how to, angle their bodies. And I think it's getting worse. I think now, from a recruiting or drafting point of view, they have to start looking at these intangibles and these general qualities, because if you focus too much on the specifics, you may get a guy that's going to be unprepared and less adaptable. And I would think that all the good coaches, and there's probably not as many as we'd like to think, but obviously Bill Belichick has an approach where he can take anyone and make them part of the system and make them adaptable. And my good friend Rob Panarello is very close with Bill Parcells, and he has all of these stories like you're talking about. They're almost like life stories. They're not football stories, but he has these great anecdotes that he can always relate back to. And I think that's maybe what's missing as we plow towards this, specificity issue of, like, we have to be exceptionally good at this one thing.
Yeah, I mean, you see it in your world, I'm sure, a ton, where they take a piece of training out and that becomes the focal point of everything. You just take some part of sprint training, and that's what we do now. This is how we do things.
Perfect example.
Like something like that, right?
There was a study that said, everybody's into these the hip thrusts where they put the bar on line their back. So everybody's going apeshit about this. Like, it's great, right? And there was a study that said
silver bullet.
It doesn't say, and this study says it doesn't make you faster. We did a study where they did it, and it doesn't make people faster. And so I posted it, and people are offended, right? Like, this is their exercise.
Well, the emotional detachment to it's crazy. And
know.
That's where I've spent 25 years in the sports training world, and it really is my passion. So I read all I can, and it's funny, after all these years, I've come right back to the beginning, where I just make sure I'm strong enough in my fundamental movements and then go live life.
Yes.
And I've realized anything beyond the fundamental movements, you'll just get better at that exercise.
Yeah.
And again, you'll get better at this exotic exercise.
And it pulls you away from what you should be doing.
And it doesn't transfer to anything else.
Yeah.
And I think strength coaches, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, everybody is always in the pursuit of being able to measure progress, because it's got to prove that what they're doing is working. And the easiest measurability or in an exercise is improvement in the exercise. It's the easiest one.
Yes.
It's the laziest one, right? So, we've added 15 pounds to this movement from start to finish. Well, you just learned to master that movement. Has it improved anything else? Right?
Yeah,
and there's a transferability.
A good example I always use is bench press and the shot put. Obviously, you have to have some degree of strength, but I know for a fact that most shot putters, once they get to a certain point of bench press, maybe 450, 500 pounds, it doesn't improve their shot put.
No.
So there's a point of diminishing returns, right?
Wouldn't you say that across the board? I mean, I kind of, again, when I was a younger athlete, you just pursued more.
Yeah.
More strength.
Got to get better.
Right? Get my 400-pound bench press to 500 pounds. That's going to improve everything. And I finally got smart enough in the middle of my pro career where you realized, and again, they would be arbitrary numbers because I don't have exact science, but there's thresholds of strength that you probably need to have, or at least should have, to be able to participate at the level of sport you're at. Beyond that, you're wasting energy and time, and you might be impeding progress elsewhere. And so what I got to a point where, again, your fundamental movements, your ability to pull weight, your ability to squat with weight, your ability to press with weight, and move with weight in some sort of loaded capacity, I wanted to make sure I was at least at my requirements. And after that, it was, where can I bring up imbalances so I can hopefully mitigate possible injuries and differences, and then work on my sport. So it just became, where are my imbalances? Where am I out of whack here? And that's going to matter more than just getting stronger to bench press, because then I become a bench presser.
Yes.
And it's kind of nonsense. But again, I think people are still drawn to that. It sells, and it's an easy measuring stick to say, we keep improving these. Here's our big numbers. Big universities are bad at it. They put the big board on the wall.
Yep.
Everybody wants the top bench, top squat, and they'll do it at the expense of so many other things, and they'll actually hang their hat on it, showing that they're superior because of this. And that's where I think it's a whole philosophical shift that's got to peel back and say, guys, comes back to my early point about young sports. What are we trying to do here?
Yeah. What's
the big picture? It's great to have these landmarks, but that's all they really are. What are we really trying to do? And it's hard, because you talk about over-specialization, and it's difficult because it's harder to measure.
Yes.
And it's harder to have somebody that will take the time to develop a painting, when it's easier just to kind of do the one little piece and master that and sell that and wrap it up and have devices that you can sell on it and measure it again and again and prove that what you're doing is improving something.
Yeah, I think we, especially now where we're so into technology, everybody wants to be able to measure, and you go to the NFL combine, and what did this guy run? What did this guy jump? And like you said, you want to be in the ballpark. You want to, if somebody does something really bad, maybe that's a red flag, but
there's boxes you got to tick.
Yeah.
But once you've ticked them, it's like any more than that. A smart scout to say, great.
Play.
He's strong enough, he's fast enough, he's mobile enough.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw something else at you where I have some fear with the levels of technology is starting to either remove or make the human art form of scouting a little lazier.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Scouting and coaching.
Evaluate
and
all that stuff,
yeah.
right? You're leaning on it, and the danger is now the younger ones coming up are only leaning or baselining everything off that, and you're removing that art form of the eye test, and sometimes just that field test, because, here's the other thing. I keynoted down at a high school in Tuolumne, California in January. It's called Somerville Bears. And you'd like this. It was a neat little story. And every time I keynote at these schools, I always want to see their little weight room and learn what they do, just learn culture-wise. Yep. And they do morning workouts, and it's called the BBC Club, the Bears Barbell Club, the 5:59 workout crew. I said, why 5:59? He said, because it's harder than starting at 6. And I laughed, Derek. And I thought, that's kind of cute. Yeah. And I thought about it. These are 15, 16-year-old kids. And what you're doing is you're psychologically letting them know they're doing something that's just a little bit harder. Yeah. It's just a little bit. It's a minute, but they can hang their hat on it. And they're actually doing it. And they're getting up a minute before most people are, or they're starting a minute before. And they're building that psychological toughness where, when life might throw something at them that's a little harder, well, it always will, they've already done things that are a little bit harder. Yep. Just a little bit, right? And you're not making them do extreme feats of ridiculousness to show them they're tougher. Just little tweaks. Yep. And it's amazing the pride that they can build on that, because they actually are starting a minute earlier, and they start before 6 o'clock. Why? It's harder. Yep. I'm a little bit harder of a person. Science won't measure that. But in the fourth quarter of a game, when you've taken a hit and you have a bit of a Charlie horse and the wind's going sideways now and your hands are cold, and that guy that had these great test scores, but had always done it in perfect conditions with great strength coaches, great facilities, had never really done anything harder. You wonder who can dig a little deeper now. Who's okay going a little harder than the comfort zone? Who's okay and who's done it kind of consistently enough where they live in life that's a little bit harder? And that, to me, you look at great teams, because football is a great example where, unlike track, I would assume, where track is usually a pretty structured environment. Usually. You can get rain.
Trying to control as much as you can.
But everybody's going to be on the same, if it's raining that day, every single person's dealing with the exact same environment. Yeah. It's 10 seconds that you prepare for and you're sprinting away you go. Well, a football game where there's multiple contact happening to you, come third, fourth quarter, everyone's dealing with different issues now. It's not a perfect environment. Nobody can control it, but you still have to function at the highest level possible while dealing with all this shit that's happened to you. And it's going to come down to your psychological ability to have validation that you've done, that you do tough things all the time. There's not really a scientific device, I don't think, that's going to measure someone's ability to dig deep when it matters. And I mean, we've all been in issues where, you know, things went sideways and the shitstorm came in, and I know this guy beside me, he's rising up because he's done this all the time. Another guy's going, I don't want to do this. We played in a Grey Cup in 06 and minus 26 in Winnipeg. I had guys on my team never been below 10 degrees. Yeah. They're freaking out. These guys run 4.4s, not in the cold. They don't want to move. They don't want to come out of the locker room. Yeah. Well, that test score doesn't mean anything now. Yeah. We got to go play a game. We got to go win. I can't feel my hands. Who cares? You got to perform.
Yeah. But I still think there's an art to how you dose that. Like, I know people go overboard with that shit.
And that's where I thought the beauty of that, the 5:59 workout club. Like, my big thing is, I'm exactly right. You know, you don't do things just to prove that you're an idiot and you can do things tougher. And that's where I think, like a minor tweak, or in your training system, a slight unknown you throw at them. Nothing that's going to make them risk harm or anything, but something that's going to psychologically force them to deal with something that they weren't overly prepared for in a way that just makes sure that you got guys that can adapt on the fly and keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. You know, and I agree with you. Look, we all laugh at this, Derek. We've had many conversations. Any idiot can just destroy somebody and say, we made you tougher. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, the example is the 5:59 Barbell Club. Their program was sound. It was just a minute earlier. These are 15-year-old kids. All it took was that minute. They took a lot of pride in that. I get up, I start earlier than you do. It's not changing anything. You weren't killing the kid. You just a small tweak, right? Maybe, and as I'm getting older, I'm trying to make sure I don't go soft with my mentality. So, you know what? Yeah, I still do my squat workouts. I do more Zercher squatting now. Why? It's a little tougher. I feel tough when I do it, and it's stupid. Maybe that's stupid, Derek. But you know what? When I get it done, I start my day. I've done something hard this morning. So now there's traffic and people are complaining. I've done something difficult.
People gravitate towards things like CrossFit, and you know, there's a point. There's a reason why people like it. Yeah. Is it the best way? We could debate that, but yeah, I get that. I understand there's a human component to all of this, right? You know?
And again, there was the beauty of this barbell club to me was it wasn't mandatory. So you're not making kids do anything. Because at the end of the day, I don't think you've helped them grow at all if you just make them do something. No. So it was sort of an encouraged invite, and kids would show up and they'd keep showing up, and then they wanted to keep showing up because they wanted to challenge themselves. Look, it's a minute earlier. They weren't all of a sudden, who's doing a 100-mile run in the morning, because that's just stupid, right? We can all kill each other with hard things, and CrossFit gives you a badge of honor because you puked 4 times more than this guy. Yeah. I did a Zercher squat because it's a little bit harder. It's still 2 sets of 5 versus 2 sets of 5 the other way. I'm not trying to kill myself. Yeah. Little tweaks, just a tiny little thing. And I found there's some value in that when life does end up throwing something at you. You're okay doing things that are a little bit harder from time to time. And I find some athletes, again, it gets back to my early point, you take your 10-year-old son and you get them this great personal trainer in this nice air-conditioned gym from day one. You know, whatever happened to just kind of going to the field with your buddies and it was raining and you guys just played. Yep. You just played, and you didn't have the coolest gear. You just kind of did stuff, and someone fell over and they got cut. And they kept playing, and now we structure everything so much that the young kids learn right away. They just kind of get taken through everything, and they haven't really had to be in environments that weren't great or weren't just perfect all the time. And then again, transferable. Not just on the field, but in life afterwards. Their new career throws a stress to them. Their marriage throws stress to them. They've never been faced with anything except nice, perfect conditions to perform their best in. And that's, again, missing part of the point of what sports was. Yep. You know, you're not going to get a medal if you lose. Yep. You don't. Yep. It's okay. Yep. Part of this is learning to lose. Part of this is going to say, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to come back and dig harder, or are you going to cry and then we give you a medal? And that's another example, though, of where we're missing what we're trying to do with these sports, and why I think we got to get back to that. And then, again, why football is so valuable, because high school football, it'll allow the most kids, hopefully, to learn the skills of winning, losing, showing up every day. I don't feel like it today. I don't care. There's a practice. You committed to something. These other people are there. You go, right? Sucking at something. There is great value at sucking at something, right? And actually knowing you suck at it and being okay being told you suck at it and having the ability to take instruction to improve at that. Not getting defensive and upset and telling your parents to go yell at the coach they can't tell you're not very good, because you're not very good. And the coach is now going to help you improve. That's what life is, right? That is what life is. And again, it's in the level. You know, I have no belief in coaches that are bullies and tell you you're terrible at life, but there is, I mean, that's nonsense too. But there's value in you know what? Do you trust somebody that would never be honest with you, would just always tell you you're amazing? My professional coach I had for 10 years, Coach Durazio, was the best ever that I've ever been around, and he was always honest. He'd tell me it sucked. So when he told me I was doing well, I believed him because he was honest on both ends. And when it sucked, there was what we're going to do to fix it. It wasn't just you suck. And one thing he did very well, and I stress this to coaches, I didn't suck. That performance, that play sucked, that technique sucked. He removed me. I don't suck.
Didn't make it personal.
No, and it may be simple and it may get lost on certain people. But he always stressed that. You know, that was some shitty technique right there, Angus. I'm not shitty.
No,
and you know, I'm an adult, but it still mattered.
Important distinction.
He cared about me, and he really, really always thought I was a very good person, but that wasn't a really good play. And that was terrible. And we can correct that. And what I think that does is it removes the ego guard on my end, because he's not attacking me. He's attacking the performance. That's cool. That's got nothing to do with me. And it allows me now to improve that without guarding my self-worth. It's not nothing to do with my self-worth.
Where does he learn that? Who teaches him that? Is that something that is taught? And how do we teach it better?
You know, I wish I could get that answer out of him. He's an old school guy that played at Kent State with Jack Lambert, and you know, he's a Pittsburgh guy, and he's hard as nails. But I don't know, but he's great at that, because if an outsider looking in is going to say, oh, he's a taskmaster slave driver, but when you listen to the words, he is impoundingly focused on improving what you do, and any criticism is on the technique, the performance. And I don't know where he learned it, but it not that it wasn't even lost on me, it was acknowledged to me from the get-go. He cares so much about me that he wants my performance to be as good as possible, and that's what we're focused on, always improving the performance. Not me. I'm good. We're good. We're always good. And, you know, I don't know, but it was a brilliant little thing that maybe everyone does. I don't know. I bet you they don't. And I bet you they don't, even with young kids. You got to make sure, you know, that you are not attacking them. And you're not even attacking their performance. You are being honest. You're being honest about it. And you're never, here's another thing too, Coach Dan was always great at, he never acknowledged a problem without presenting us with the solution. So we wouldn't go, well, that sucks. Great, what am I supposed to do now? Right? It sucked because of this, and this is what you need, this is what we need to, he was in it with us, this is what we need to work on to get it better. Okay, I can do that. And I think we need more in the art of coaching. I think we need more help in the art of coaching. As you know, look, teaching techniques is kind of easy. It really is. Like maybe not teaching it, learning what the technique is.
Understanding the techniques, recognizing it. Everybody, you know, most people should be able to do that. But imparting how to get there is.
But managing people. Managing the ability to have them believe that you care about improving them as a human being. And it's obviously imperative to say it to the young kids because we're helping them grow up. But even at the pro level, and we just talked about that. This specialization. I think specialization too. The pursuit of specialization removes even the athlete. It's just his ability to perform now, right? We need a 6'3", 240 Mike linebacker. Jimmy X is our 6'2", 240 Mike. They fit the parameters. It's not even a person. It's just it's a statistical package that meets your needs. Right? We play with a one tech that's a 360 pound short stout one tech. That's what we look for. Kind of the Chip Kelly world, right? Where everybody's just a statistical package. We look for stats that equal what we want, and that's how we win. And so, you know, you've moneyballed it to the point where these aren't people. They're just they're the chess piece that we found that fit that shape. And you go back to your Bill Parcells talks. You hear from the players that played for him. It's like their dad.
Yeah.
Like they love him. So when you got
and all the
your dad
coaches
that, loves
that coached under him too.
Oh yeah, and so
one of which was Belichick.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so you get to situations where life throws a lot, or the game throws wrinkles at you, and the conditions are terrible, and it's all a disaster, and you got every reason to shit the bed and give up on all this. But when you got your dad that loves you, you're going to do things beyond just your statistical package and beyond your contractual obligation, because you truly are a family. And I think that's really lost a lot on pro sports now too, because everything has got to fit these packages. We got to measure against it. We got to prove against it, and it's become a game of science and stats.
Yeah. I watched the on the weekend. I watched the replay of the Super Bowl, and that was interesting because I'm watching this thing going, I can't believe they came back. I cannot believe they came back. Like even into the fourth quarter, I think there was 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I'm like, it should be over, right? But for some reason,
the biggest coaching point I took from that Super Bowl, and I'm sure it's all from Belichick, but it's lived every day with the team members, is I think why people hate New England so much. They never change their approach no matter what's going on outside of them. I mean, they are the living example of stoic philosophy.
yeah,
They control what they can control.
yeah,
Everything else happened, it happened. They just keep going with what they do. And it's that person that just waits for you to screw up. They're not going to all of a sudden panic and change. Oh, this is happening. Change the playbook.
Yeah.
They just keep going. They just keep going. And they are the epitome of that thing that everybody gives lip service to, but nobody actually does, is just trust the process. Don't worry about the outcome. Surrender the outcome, they talk about, right? Believe in what we do and do what we believe. And that's it. Never changed from it. Yeah. And they did it that game. And it was just like, they just kind of kept doing what they do. And all of a sudden the cracks open and their advantage, and off they go. And it's kind of monotonous and boring, and it wins.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is a metaphor for life, right? You got everyone jumping on fads, jumping on the hip thrust, jumping on the new protein supplement. This is what changes everything. Build your framework of what your philosophy on life is, and just do it every day.
Yeah.
Do it every single day, and fads will come and go, but you will just keep moving forward.
You'll endure.
You'll just keep moving forward, right? And again, that's a coaching point that, we got back to this talking earlier today about these young coaches, and they think the answer is this bizarre offensive formation that Oregon ran last year. I was teaching kids to be true to the foundations and principles of this sport. And again, my coach Durazio, 10 years playing pro with him. We tweaked our blocking technique maybe twice in the 10 years. And of all our off-season training and all our practice training, we had about 10 run block drills and maybe 5-6 pass block drills, and we rolled them every day for 10 years. And what he did was, and this is very, this is very old school Russian block training philosophy. We didn't change the exercise, he would change the parameters within the exercise.
Sure.
So we didn't have to keep learning new stimulus. Yeah. He tweaked it by tweaking parameters of it. So we'd speed it up or slow it down, or you would add contact or no contact. You'd be against a sled or against the person, but it was always the same. So we hammered home the basic principles of how we run blocked. It never changed, and we rep it. 10 years, short and fast, 4 minutes every day here, 3 minutes every day here, different parameters each time, but never throwing new things at us all the time where, your CNS had to adapt to it, your psychological had to adapt to it, your confidence had to adapt to it. So I could block the way I was supposed to block in my sleep near the end in every condition possible, because he believed in this. Yeah. And we stayed true to it his entire career. Yeah. And we made it interesting by just, we talk about the Russian training. They would squat all your whole life, but sometimes it'd be high volume, low volume, short rest, long rest, overhead, front, back. Still just squatting though. In the end, once you've learned how to squat, you just adjust the parameters within. You're not doing 19 different exercises. You're just tweaking it again and again.
Just dilute the technique if you start adding in all this other stuff.
Oh yeah. Right? And so you get back to kids, you teach kids, I gotta go talk to high school, you get back to basketball, specialization even. They don't know how to free throw. They don't know how to dribble with their left hand. Why? Because I can dunk, and I'll make millions doing this.
Yeah, dunk or shoot a three. But from what I understand, one of the talks I did to somebody, they're saying that they are worse now at anywhere inside the 3-point line. They're shooting.
Because it's here.
Yeah.
They have nothing else.
Yeah, it's either you're dunking it or you're
but it's the pursuit of specialization, right? And so at the cost of everything else. And the world is pushing this too, I think, where don't be well-rounded, just excel in one thing and you're good to go, at the expense of everything else.
Yeah.
You have $1 million, you have no friends or a marriage. Like but sports to me had always been about, again, you play to your strengths, but you're constantly trying to bring up your weaknesses. And that teaches you a lot about life, right? Or else those weaknesses will get exposed when it matters most. Yeah, I probably upset a lot of people with this, but I'm not in pro sports as a profession, so I don't have the pressures of having to answer my job description on always winning this week. So I can step back and kind of bring that philosophical view of I think sports has to be bigger than just winning that game, or else it's pretty shallow. And I think, again, this is oversimplifying, but I think many years ago, now I'm in the business world, many years ago you looked at businesses and they'd love to hire ex-athletes because they were used to juggling a job and a sport and multitasking and being able to handle lots of loads and attention and being very self-sufficient. And now you're seeing them that, unless they're hiring them to be a face for a marketing campaign, that might be worried that what skills do they bring beyond running a 4.5 or 4.440? They're so specialized that they were so good at this. A lot of them have had other people taking care of every other aspect of their life. Every aspect of life. So now you throw them in a career where it's like, go, they might be like, well, where's all the people that do everything for me? Derek, but you work with athletes all the time. How do you find, actually, no, let me pull it back. You deal with coaches all the time too, right? Now, do you find when they come and listen to you and talk to you and look for advice, I find too that they're wanting the answer that's going to make all the difference. Is that a fair statement? Like they're coming because this is what's gonna make things happen. Like how much holistic talk do you get from coaches where they're talking, bettering their players overall, or they need to improve this, and so this they'll plug in and then it's better. You do it mostly with professional and collegiate coaches, right?
Yeah, and they're not sport coaches. They're like physical preparation, strength coaches, sometimes physical therapists, athletic trainers. And I would say it depends. It really depends on who you're talking to. But there's a certain group of people who want something new and something flashy and something that they can, just follow blindly. Whereas you'll get some people, and again, it's maybe how they were brought up or who they had contact with before, who understand that it's a philosophical, system-based approach. Like you can't focus too much on one thing. You have to look at the big picture. And obviously those types of people are probably going to be better in life, right? If you have that approach, which allows you to adapt to different scenarios and different situations, you're going to be better. And I think that's something that's very hard to teach.
Yeah.
It's very, whether it's the football field or whether it's life or even in track and field, like you have to be able to teach people to adapt to circumstances and not just focus on one or two things or try to find something that'll be, the be-all, end-all technique. I mean, things change. We all know that. Stuff that I believed 15 years ago isn't what I believe now because of it. And somebody brought up a very good point on the weekend. It's about experiential knowledge. It's not about a map or a recipe. It's about, okay, what have I learned in my past that can give me the best information upon which to base my decision? And that's a tough thing for when you're trying to impart that to young people because you're essentially saying this is going to take a while.
Well, this is where I think it's very important to help them build principles, live within the principles, and now evolve with your experiences.
Yes.
But because without any principles, you're at the mercy of just doing whatever, right? Yeah. So I think you need to ground them in some foundational things that they may change, but as far as you've seen in your whole life, these are a few fundamental realities.
Yes.
And whether it be you want to become a stronger person. I'm a big believer in you should be able to vertically load squat, and you should be able to move some weight from the ground. I believe in creating force through the ground with vertically loading and pulling from the floor.
Absolutely.
I think that's always been there. I think it'll always be there. That's a big, broad statement, but I think to become a stronger human being, to generate more force through the ground, and generally make your body stronger, more prepared to do anything else, those have to be present. And I always believe that the best option is the one that creates more options. Yeah. So that's going to give you a foundation to go farther than that. But, you know, you talk specifics, like you said, those are ever changing.
Yeah, and it doesn't, I mean, a lot of the time people ask me like, oh, what weightlifting exercise is the best for sprinting? And it's like, well, it doesn't work that way.
Right. They want that special
yeah, I know,
answer,
it's
right?
like, you know, if there was a great weightlifting exercise, then, you know, you'd probably be a good weightlifter. But but that's not the simple answer, right? No. So I like you understand that everything that we do in terms of movement is dictated by gravity. Okay, and what direction is gravity operating in? You know, vertical, right? So that's where I start from, and even in sprinting, everybody wants to talk about, you know, horizontal and pushing and all that, but it is gravity that's limiting us more than anything else. So, you know, that's where you start, and then build your system around that, and have a philosophy, and then at least if you I think that's the problem now, is people don't have a general philosophy, and then when things break down, they're lost.
Well, you get back to what I said earlier about ask the 5 whys.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. Did I do this because I saw this and they say it does this? Why? Why are you doing it? Yeah. And then when you ask it, why? Why? I don't know. It's the new thing. Why? Like, why are you doing it?
This guy told me, or, you know,
yeah, and I think if you
was
can,
on Instagram.
If you can keep pulling back the layers of why, you can get to your philosophy then. Yeah. This is what I believe then. You know, at the end of it all, then you're like, okay, I can lean on this, and I can grow from it, and I can adapt from it being a platform, right? Yeah. But people don't have that. That's why people pay people like you to just give me a program. Just tell me what to do.
Yeah. And
you don't learn anything.
No.
You learn nothing. You gain no knowledge. And again, it comes back to my point. What's the point of sports? What's the point of sports training? It should help people grow up and learn about themselves. Yeah. It really should. It really should. At the end of the day, I'm very fortunate that I played, 20 some odd years of football, 13 years pro. I don't need to play the sport anymore. I'm a lucky one that I don't go to the game and go, oh, I'd give anything in the field. I want to do other things. I'm able to take most of it, though, and keep it in my life on a daily basis, psychologically, mentally, and philosophically, what I could take from the sport. It's transferable. Yeah. I'm taking it with me. If you didn't learn one thing except to excel in the gifts that you were hopefully born with, you didn't learn one thing. And those are some guys I see, they just want to get on the field because there's the only place where that equaled anything. They weren't able to take it and do anything beyond the performance of that field. And that's why so many people, I think, struggle because they didn't learn enough to transfer it.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and it's over now. I got to get back to where it mattered. Yeah. And, if you're a coach that can make them understand and then embrace it and learn it and use it on their own, they're empowered now to be able to take these skills and go do other things with them in life. Yeah. Right? And that gets back to the over-specialization. If it's just about specialization, when you're done with it, what are you supposed to do with a 12-foot broad jump outside of sports? If that's what mattered, and that's the only thing that mattered and why you're here, it's kind of sad.
Well, and that's the great thing about this kid that I helped out last week, or last couple of weeks, the rugby player. Did you see that?
Yeah. I heard him on the radio this morning.
Yeah. So here's a perfect example of a guy who didn't over-specialize, and he has an opportunity to make it. Yeah. So that's great. I think people should jump all over that and say, look what this guy did.
Yeah, shining example. Wow, look at the other problem with over-specialization too, the rampant rise of ridiculous injuries to teenage kids.
Yeah.
I mean, ACLs blowing out for 14-year-olds? Really?
Less. My buddy in New York was showing me pictures of kids 7, 8 years old, ACL.
You overdo repeated angles on body parts that are underdeveloped. What do you think is going to happen? A human body, a general athlete should be able to go out and in and up and down, but you just do the repetitive motion or whatever it may be, and that's it? Yeah. They're going to go. Kid's not even developed yet. Yeah. And it's a disaster. And then one other point I'll talk about specialization, this is, again, unscientific finding of mine. Very unscientific.
I'm sure most of yours are.
Almost all of them, okay? But think of this. If you just played hockey since you were 6 years old and nothing else, or baseball, or football, pick one sport. It's the only thing you ever did. It was the only world you ever knew.
Yeah.
How many gears do you have as a personality type? You talk hockey. You talk hockey locker room with your hockey buddies. What's your friendship circle? It's your hockey buddies.
Yeah.
That's all you know. Okay? Then the day comes where hockey's done and you got to get out in the world, and life is about building relationships and whatnot. You can just talk hockey. You talk the way hockey guys talk, or football or baseball. It's all you've got. You got one gear as a person. You talk to people that played, you know, in their 40s now or whatnot, that played five sports or 3 sports or whatever, and they were varying types of sports. Not only do they have a ton of diverse relationships, all different kinds of friends.
Yep.
They're comfortable in all different kinds of situations.
They're great stories too.
Great, great. You're right, great stories. But I'm being serious though. You get in the business world now, or whatever you're going to do, you're not awkward when it's not just your sport type talking. You can shift gears. Yeah. You're a guy that's very comfortable doing a lot of things. So not just physically you're able to do a lot of things, psychologically, your personality type can be flexible. Yeah. You're not just pigeonholed into being that kind of guy. And I think there's a lot of power in that. Yeah, no science to back that up.
That's okay.
But there's reality to back that up.
That's okay. Experience and reality
yeah.
counts for something.
I think we're here.
Awesome.
I think
Thank you, man.
No, thank you.
If their program didn't say, come play for us, he tells you straight right off the bat, he's on the streets. He is on the streets. So on behalf of Nolan and myself and every other 15-year-old out there that's lost and confused, to all of you that are involved in football, helping, giving back, giving your time to mold young boys into productive men, I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I really enjoyed spending that time with Angus on that drive. Again, I don't even know what we're going to, but it was a good time. And I'm not sure if you appreciate, the story that he was trying to convey about what he feels are the important parts of being involved in high school football. But hopefully it made you think. And it doesn't necessarily have to be football. He offered some unique details about why he thought football was important, but I think you could probably apply most of those things to any sport under the right conditions. Like, obviously we don't want to promote too much in the way of early specialization and having different levels, stratification of levels, and because we know that some athletes are late bloomers, and we talk about this one fellow who's now in training camp with the Philadelphia Eagles, who was a football player in high school, and then he went to rugby. And, he has the physical skills to be successful. And if somebody just gives him the time and patience, he could be a pretty successful NFL football player. So who knows? So these types of issues are always in the back of my head. And when I'm advising parents and athletes, you don't have to be in a rush. You don't have to get it all done right now. And I think that's probably the important message that you can get from these types of talks. And just participating is important, and putting in the time and looking at all the intangible benefits that you can get from being involved in a sport. And obviously you want to be as safe as possible, and you want to promote good coaching and good coaching practices. We're not doing things for the sake of doing them or making people just mentally tough, or all of these things that are probably very unnecessary. So I think that's an area where football can clean things up, and maybe other sports too, ice hockey, lacrosse, maybe educating people on the benefits of being a good teammate, working on a skill, problem solving, being creative. Those are the types of things we want to push forward. So please offer your comments on Facebook, Twitter at Strength Power Speed, but also on YouTube. And I'm looking forward to hearing from people and seeing if they get value out of this talk with Angus. So thank you once again from strengthpowerspeed.com.